We'll give you $200,000 in alimony, so please divorce our son and leave this condo. Matt isn't to blame, but since we are receiving this condo, we should pay you compensation. Seeing my father-in-law make such a proposal, I was initially a bit irritated, but the moment I realized their huge misunderstanding, I couldn't help but chuckle to myself. I thought, seriously, I kind of feel sorry for them since they're so wrong. And when my husband and his parents found out the truth, their faces were unbearable to watch. My name is Kelly, and I'm 30 years old. While working in an office, I lived happily with my beloved husband. I've been married to Matt for a year now. We were starting to think about expanding our family, but his family visited often, making it hard for us to have some time alone. Our condo was right near my husband's parents' home, and his sister's family also lived close by, so they frequently dropped by, sometimes without any particular reason. The view here is nice. I'd like to live in a place like this too. When my mother-in-law said this, my father-in-law nodded in agreement. There's a vacant room. Why don't we all move here? Hearing this, my husband smiled and responded, that sounds great. We could save on rent for the family home, and it would be more fun for mom and dad to be here. When it comes to the condo, my husband talks as if it's his own, but in reality, it belongs to my brother. However, my husband somehow thinks that marrying me made it his. This misunderstanding started when we decided to get married. When we visited my family, my husband and in-laws were really surprised to find out that my parents had already passed away. It must have been tough without your parents. My brother, however, responded, it wasn't too long ago that our parents passed away, so it wasn't that hard. Even though my brother explained clearly, I felt that my in-laws somewhat looked down on us. No offense, but this house is a bit old. Weren't you struggling financially? They said. When my mother-in-law made a slightly harsh comment, my brother just went along with the conversation. Sorry to worry you, and thank you. Although my brother said this with a smile, we weren't really living a hard life. Our parents' home was quite old, which probably led my in-laws to think that we had a tough time after losing our parents early. My father passed away about 2 years before our wedding and had worked for a large corporation. My mother, a housewife who supported the family, had passed away a year before him, and both did their best to raise us until we were independent. I had told my husband about our family situation, but it seems it wasn't communicated well to his parents. What do you do for a living? When my father-in-law asked this condescendingly, my brother calmly replied, I'm self-employed. My brother owns quite a bit of real estate and earns a significant amount from just the rent. The condo we live in is entirely owned by him. Even before I got married, I was living there for free. I guess self-employment isn't going well, that's why you have to live in such an old house. My mother-in-law made another rude comment, and my brother's wife countered lightly. Yes, it's old but spacious. Cleaning it is quite the task. My brother's wife said this, but there was a hint of sarcasm. However, my mother-in-law didn't get the nuance. My brother's wife, who has always been kind and like a real sister to me, seemed a bit angry at my in-laws' behavior but managed to navigate the situation smoothly. When the atmosphere became a bit tense, my brother skillfully changed the subject. So, you two will be living in the condo where Kelly is staying after you get married, right? When we nodded, my father-in-law had something else to say. How can Kelly, who is said to have no money, live in such a luxurious condo? I was a bit disheartened by his words, but my brother laughed it off, easing the atmosphere. The condo was bought with the inheritance our father left us. I was surprised to see my brother lying. Just as I was about to reveal the truth, my brother's wife subtly stopped me. What? Kelly bought that condo? I thought it was rented. You've been quite modest about it. My mother-in-law was clearly in a panic. Seeing this, my brother nodded with a bit of pride. I always honestly told my husband and in-laws that this condo was rented. I don't pay rent, but the property is in my name, so what my brother said wasn't entirely a lie. The attitude of my in-laws changed drastically after they started to believe my brother's story. They still looked down on my brother somewhat, but they suddenly became friendly towards me. After my husband and in-laws left, I complained to my brother. Why did you lie about the condo being mine? Matt's parents are completely mistaken now. When I got angry, my brother replied in phased. Well, they seem to underestimate you, so I just played a little prank. But you see, once they thought the condo was yours, their attitude towards you changed, right? Indeed, I felt like my in-laws had been underestimating me, but after my brother's comment, they began to treat me with more warmth. My brother's wife was also worried about me due to the rude behavior of my in-laws. Be careful with Matt's parents. If anything happens, you can always come here to talk. I was feeling a bit anxious about my in-laws, so my sister-in-law's thoughtfulness was very comforting. My brother told me to keep the truth a secret, so I haven't told anyone that the condo is actually his. It was shocking to realize how lightly my in-laws regarded my brother, but it wasn't a problem since we were not living together and I was happily married to Matt. Since my in-laws' home was nearby, greeting them for holidays was easy. That's how my new life started. I thought I had forgotten about this incident, but then an unexpected visitor showed up. I had planned to visit my in-laws' home, but to my surprise, my in-laws and sister-in-law came to our condo. I thought we'd go and visit you for Christmas. But what's the occasion? When I asked my in-laws, who had suddenly arrived for Christmas, my sister-in-law chuckled and said, the place is warm and the view is nice, so we just stopped by. Don't mind us, Kelly. Despite her words, I had to rush around serving coffee and snacks. Kelly, I'd prefer roasted turkey over the usual Christmas dishes. Can you order some? My mother-in-law requested roasted turkey. Matt immediately picked up the phone and ordered from the restaurant. Did you know your parents were coming? When I asked Matt, he looked surprised and said, why are you mad? It's normal for them to come to our house, no? Matt had heard from his parents that they would be visiting for Christmas, but they hadn't mentioned it to me at all. For Matt, having his parents over seemed completely normal, and he implied, as a wife, you should welcome them without complaints. Reluctantly, I took care of my in-laws. Even as the night grew late, they showed no signs of leaving. Are they planning to stay over? While I was pondering, Matt started giving orders again. Prepare a place for my parents to sleep. Kelly, you're not very attentive. Matt only gave orders and didn't help at all. I had to prepare a room for my in-laws. While I was busy with preparations, my in-laws and sister-in-law stayed up all night in the living room and eventually slept there. The next morning, after they left, Matt looked at me happily. It felt strange. Everyone was very pleased, and they said they'd come to stay over again. It's good we live here. He said this casually and disappeared without helping. They're coming again. I thought, dreading the next Christmas. But it wasn't even a month before my in-laws and sister-in-law showed up again. We'll be staying over tonight. We've already ordered food so as not to trouble you, Kelly. Just take care of the payment. They entered the house, and my sister-in-law immediately started preparing for a party in the living room. When the fried chicken and pizza arrived, I was responsible for the payment. Matt hadn't returned yet and was unaware of what was happening. When he finally came home, I confronted him. It's troublesome when they suddenly decide to stay over. You knew about this beforehand, didn't you? Seeing me upset, Matt responded with his usual "what's wrong" expression, but I told you, they said they'd come again. They're always welcome here, no? I was utterly dumbfounded by my husband's reaction. Seeing my in-laws enjoying themselves as they pleased and leaving without even caring how I feel, I genuinely worried they might take over our home. When I discussed this with my brother and his wife was furious. That's terrible. You need to talk to Matt and change this situation. While I appreciated her advice, I couldn't see my husband being helpful in resolving the issue. My husband was under his parents' control, and lately, he's been coming home late, leaving us no chance to talk. My brother and his wife were just bewildered by what I shared. My in-laws would come over even when my husband was not around. It seemed like my words didn't affect them at all. We were seriously wondering how to change the situation. Then, my brother seemed determined and said, maybe I should talk to Matt. As your brother, he might listen to what I have to say. I was a bit hopeful that my husband would listen to my brother's advice. However, when my brother called him over, Matt brought his parents and sister with him. Kelly is now part of our family, so I don't want you to interfere. No matter what my brother tried to discuss, my father-in-law would interrupt, making a proper conversation impossible. Are you so bothered by us enjoying ourselves with Kelly in that wonderful condo? Are you jealous because it's better than your old house? My mother-in-law joined in, saying something mean to my brother. If I were there, I might have exploded in anger, but my brother just endured and asked, "Please don't come to the condo anymore. Did you call us here just to say this? What a waste of time." My sister-in-law yelled and stormed out with my husband and in-laws. My brother intended to talk to my husband alone, but the situation escalated with my in-laws and sister-in-law present. Even my brother was appalled. Hearing about this, I felt embarrassed by the behavior of my husband and in-laws. I'm sorry for putting you through this. That family is really strange. I apologized over the phone, and while my brother laughed, I sensed his mixed emotions. Yeah, they are odd. Kelly, maybe you need to rethink your future with Matt. His words resonated with my own feelings. As I was about to hang up, feeling down, my brother's wife suggested something. Is Matt up to something suspicious? He's always coming home late. Her words made me anxious as I was already suspicious of my husband's actions. I feel the same way. Something's off. I shared my suspicions of his infidelity, and my brother unusually raised his voice. If he's cheating while you are taking care of the family, that's unacceptable. I'll look into it. Hearing my brother's firm promise, I felt a bit relieved. My husband was blissfully unaware of the turmoil. He comes home late every night, and I have no idea what he's up to. My in-laws staying over has become a routine. But one day, I noticed they had spread their belongings all over the room. After they left, I found suitcases and boxes in the closet, packed with clothes, as if they planned to live here. I was furious, but then I realized this condo isn't mine. If my husband is indeed cheating, I'll just leave. What my husband and in-laws do from here on is no longer my concern. With that thought, I suddenly felt lighter. Even if he wasn't cheating, I couldn't stay with a husband who prioritized his parents over me. Then, I started wondering about my sister-in-law's husband. She visits often, but I never see her husband. Could there be trouble between them? If my in-laws and sister-in-law plan to move here, what would happen to him? I barely knew him since we only exchanged greetings at the wedding, but I wonder how he felt about this situation. Matt had mentioned that he hadn't seen his sister's husband much, so the idea of all of us living together seemed daunting. But ultimately, I had no intention of living with them, so maybe I shouldn't be too concerned. While I was pondering this, the day finally arrived. When I returned home from work, I found my in-laws and sister-in-law relaxing in my home as if they owned the place. We'll all be living here from now on. Matt gave us the keys, they said, as if it was a done deal. I just quietly observed my sister-in-law, who seemed thrilled about the arrangement. Seeing my calm demeanor, my mother-in-law asked me with a hint of annoyance, "Why are you so calm? Even Matt kept it a secret from you." Hearing this, my frustration with my husband grew even stronger. I couldn't forgive Matt for deciding to move his parents in without my consent. But that day, Matt wasn't home, and my frustration remained unresolved. As I remained silent, my father-in-law said smoothly, "We'll give you $200,000 in alimony, so please divorce our son and leave this condo. Matt isn't to blame, but since we are receiving this condo, we should pay you compensation." I was infuriated by his confident demeanor, but their misunderstanding was so absurd that I couldn't help but laugh. I thought, wow, this is incredible. It's like watching a drama. Trying to suppress my laughter, my sister-in-law said sharply, "You should consider yourself lucky for getting the compensation, so just pack your things and leave." Without a word, I grabbed my bag I had prepared and decided to leave the house. But just before leaving, I told my in-laws, "I'll bring the divorce papers later, so please prepare the condo's contract as well." Hearing about the contract, my in-laws' faces lit up with joy, clearly misunderstanding that they would get the condo. Just bring the documents and we'll settle the contract quickly. Seeing my father-in-law's happy face, I couldn't hold back my laughter anymore and left the house. When I arrived at my parents' home, my sister-in-law greeted me with a smile. Good timing, Kelly. The results of Matt's infidelity investigation just came in. When I met my brother inside, he looked serious. He really was cheating. You should dump him right away. I told my brother about being kicked out of the condo and being pressured to divorce, which made him even angrier. What the hell? That's so unreasonable. Unbelievable. It was rare for my brother to show so much anger, so I kind of panicked. Then, my sister-in-law came in and calmly soothed my brother. Well, it's not bad. Usually, you don't get $200,000 in compensation for being cheated on. Indeed, it seemed like my in-laws were acting as if they were paying the compensation in exchange for getting the condo. Anticipating my in-laws' reaction upon discovering the truth about their son's betrayal, I felt a bit excited and went to the condo with my brother the next day. Upon seeing us, my father-in-law immediately brought up the condo contract. Today's the day, right? Did you bring the contract? But we started by having Matt sign the divorce papers. We'll be using this luxury condo for our family, so don't be mad. Matt said, seemingly unaware that his affair had been exposed, and made a snide remark after signing. After the signing, my brother firmly told Matt, considering you cheated on Kelly and lied to her, this compensation is only fair. This doesn't settle everything, but stay away from her from now on. Hearing about the affair, my in-laws were shocked, and Matt turned pale. Matt, did you really betray her? Is that why you weren't coming home? Even as my father-in-law questioned him, Matt remained silent. Meanwhile, my sister-in-law, seemingly realizing something, muttered, "That's just how marriages are. The person being cheated on is also at fault." Ignoring my sister-in-law's words, I urged them to proceed with the condo paperwork. Regardless of what Matt did, the compensation has been paid, so the condo is ours now. My father-in-law declared, starting to sign the documents. The compensation was already in my account, so he seemed eager to finalize the contract quickly. While Matt watched his father sign, he was visibly unsettled and avoided eye contact with both my brother and me. The signing is complete. From now on, this is our home. You have nothing to do with it anymore, so please leave quickly. My mother-in-law triumphantly declared, so we left without saying anything. When we got into the elevator, the extent of my in-laws' misunderstanding gave me a headache. It's unbelievable. Even after reading the documents, they don't get it. They're completely convinced that the condo is theirs. My brother seemed to be worried about something else. Where did that $200,000 come from? I don't remember Matt's family being that wealthy. Indeed, it was implausible that my husband's family suddenly had such a large sum of money. But now, I couldn't even ask my husband about the source of the funds. I could only wonder. Then, about a month after the separation, my ex-husband and in-laws showed up at my parents' house in a flurry. Why do I have to pay the rent for that condo? It's supposed to be mine. My ex-husband screamed in anger, and my father-in-law pleaded in panic. We can't afford such high rent. We paid the compensation thinking we would get the condo, not knowing it was a rental. We need a refund. My mother-in-law also exploded in anger. We didn't need to pay $200,000 in compensation. Give us back the excess amount. As they all insisted on their selfish demands, my brother calmly told them the truth. You see, I'm actually the owner of that condo. The entire building is mine. Hearing this, my ex-husband and in-laws were at a loss for words and finally quieted down. Realizing that they had signed a rental agreement and had misunderstood what my father-in-law had signed, he couldn't hide his regret. Even if the condo was Kelly's, it wouldn't transfer to Matt after a divorce. Don't make us laugh. Even after my brother's explanation, my mother-in-law shook her head, still insisting on getting the compensation back. We accepted that compensation as a response to the infidelity. We can't return it after it's been paid. When I responded calmly, My mother-in-law began to speak hesitantly. We plan to use the condo as collateral for a loan. But now, we can't repay the $200,000. Her confession surprised me. My ex-husband and in-laws all slumped their shoulders. "Where's your sister?" I asked, noticing the absence of my sister-in-law, who was usually with them. My ex-husband awkwardly answered, "It seemed she was cheating too, causing a divorce negotiation with her husband. She's being asked for compensation but is already in debt because of the payment to Kelly and can't borrow more." That's what was going on. When my sister-in-law hinted at something during the revelation of my ex-husband's affair, I finally understood what she meant. They continued to cause a fuss about the condo rights and the return of the compensation, but my brother and I stood firm. As my ex-husband was leaving, he threw one last remark at me. "Because of you, I even got dumped by my girlfriend." He left with tears in his voice. I had only done what was necessary. It was their fault for being unfaithful. My ex-husband's family had to leave the condo because they couldn't afford the rent and started a new life in a cheaper place. My sister-in-law was with them, and they were all struggling to repay their debts. They were barely managing the interest payments, and now my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, who used to stay at home, were working outside, but it still wasn't enough. I heard that the once close-knit family was now just blaming each other, burdened by the alimony of both and the moving expenses. Meanwhile, I returned to my brother's peaceful home life. Just when things seemed to be settling down, my brother and his wife shared some wonderful news. My sister-in-law was pregnant. When my brother shared the news with joy, I felt happy too. Seeing my brother's family filled with happiness made me long for a similar future. I want to cherish love and build a warm family where we respect each other like them. So, I'm open to new relationships, hoping to meet a wonderful man and someday have a family of my own, filled with smiles, just like my brother's.
I have left the management of Mom's luggage to you. Mom said she feels lonely being alone, and my commute is tough. I thought about a solution, and I think the best thing is to have Mom come live here. So I've decided for us to live with Mom. The luggage will arrive on Saturday. So I'm counting on you to receive it. Suddenly, I received a phone call from my husband without any prior notice. There had been no consultation about this plan to live together. I haven't heard anything about this. It's troubling to have this living arrangement sprung on me like this. The spare room is practically a storeroom right now. How do you plan to handle this? Today is Tuesday, and I don't have any days off until Saturday, so there's no time to clean the room. As I objected, he said, "Don't worry, it's fine even in that state. That's why I'm asking you. Mom will head your way on Sunday. Please take care of everything." My husband was making unilateral decisions. I felt my heart growing colder. If my husband was going to make important decisions on his own, then I had the right to make my own decisions. "Okay, all right." I replied that way and ended the call. My name is Mandy. I live with Jeff, a classmate from middle school. After graduating from university, I started working in sales at an IT company. I lost my father to illness in my childhood and have lived with my mom ever since. Mom works clerical jobs at a small company during the day and has a side job at home at night. Despite coming from a single-parent background, I had the same opportunities for lessons and education as other kids. After graduating and getting a job, I've come to appreciate how hard my mom has worked all these years and hope she can now enjoy her own time. In my sales job at an IT company, technical knowledge and sales skills are required, as well as building trust with clients. The knowledge I desperately learned is gradually bearing fruit, and I am becoming trusted by customers. Currently, I am consistently among the top performers in sales. Since performance directly affects salary, I also feel a sense of accomplishment in my work. There are days so busy I hardly have time for lunch, but the effort ties directly to results, keeping me motivated. Reuniting with my husband was just a moment in my busy daily life. That afternoon, as I had a client visit planned, I was enjoying a café au lait in the park. As I watched children play and sat on a bench, enjoying a peaceful moment, someone suddenly addressed me. "Excuse me, are you Mandy?" "I'm sorry if I'm mistaken." He spoke as if he knew me, but I couldn't recall immediately. "Yes, that's me." Worried that not remembering his name might be rude, I answered vaguely, "You really haven't changed at all." A man in a delivery company uniform began a familiar conversation. "It's me. We were classmates in middle school. Don't you remember? I transferred schools, but I'm Jeff." Jeff. He was a classmate from middle school. Jeff, the one who transferred. He always brightened up the class, being so good at sports and a central figure. "Jeff, it's really been a while. I didn't recognize you at all. You're still as spaced out as ever, Mandy." His unchanged expression brought back old memories. Glancing at the clock, I saw that the time for my client appointment was approaching. "Oh, sorry, I have to go now. I have work." As I started to leave, he stopped me and said, "Mandy, if you're okay with it, give me your contact. Let's go out for a meal when you have time." Surprisingly, I happily agreed and exchanged contact information with him. Then I hurried off to my client. That encounter led to us often dining together, growing closer, and eventually discussing marriage. Meeting my in-laws for the first time was a very nerve-wracking experience. His family consists of his father, a stay-at-home mom, and Jeff himself. After introducing myself, I presented a gift from a confectionery shop near my workplace. "I hope you will be satisfied with these treats from a confectionery shop near my office. However," my mother-in-law frowned and replied, "We don't usually eat these." I apologized for the oversight right then. I should have checked beforehand. I am truly sorry. Inside, I was angry with him because he hadn't shared anything about his family's preferences in our discussions before the meeting. A slight unease remained in my heart. Later, in the guest room, we talked about various things, including how we met, our university days, and work. My father-in-law asked questions and nodded kindly. Eventually, the conversation shifted to my family background. I shared that I lived with my mother and that my father had passed away from illness when I was young. My mother-in-law's expression hardened. "Mandy, you were raised by a single parent?" she asked with a somewhat stern look. "Yes, that's correct." Upon hearing my response, my mother-in-law remarked, "It would have been better if Jeff's wife came from a more typical family background. You know, children raised by single parents often have personality or psychological issues because they lack love. It's pitiful, but it might be problematic for marriage." Such remarks shouldn't have been made in front of me. Looking to him for a response, I saw that he was just staring outside as if nothing had happened. In that moment, without his support, I responded to my mother-in-law with all my might. My mother raised me with all her effort. I have never felt inferior because I was from a single-parent family. I emphasized this strongly. Tears welled up in my eyes. "Honey, that's quite rude, don't you think?" "That's a prejudice." Then, my father-in-law interjected. "There are many families with both parents where love is still lacking. Mandy has grown up to be such a wonderful person. What problems are you talking about?" My father-in-law admonished my mother-in-law. "Moreover, Mandy is a top performer in her sales role at an IT company. Her salary is quite substantial. Jeff needs to keep up, haha." With that, my father-in-law eased the chilly atmosphere. As we were leaving, my father-in-law said to me, "Mandy, we will support you and Jeff. Families come in various forms, so please build your own unique family. Feel free to come to us anytime you need to talk." His words were incredibly comforting. Despite many uncertainties about the future, his words encouraged me, and I felt I could overcome them. We discussed and decided not to have a wedding ceremony. Instead, we planned a meal together with my in-laws, my mother, and my husband and me, 5 people in total. My father-in-law and my mother enjoyed a pleasant time throughout the meal. My mother-in-law, who had hardly greeted me properly, said during the meal, "To be honest, I would have preferred Jeff's spouse to come from a typical family, not a single-parent home." She added, "Children from single-parent families often cling to money due to a lack of financial ease." Right after she said this, my father-in-law changed the topic. "By the way, do you like oranges?" he asked my mother. "Yes, I love citrus fruits," my mother happily replied. "A friend of mine lives in Florida and sends us a lot each year. Next time, we'll share some with you." My mother was delighted. "That would be wonderful." "Thank you." My father-in-law's tact saved the moment. Due to the noise in the restaurant, my mother either didn't notice or pretended not to hear and made no comment. After the meal, we walked through the bustling streets on our way home. "Mom, I'm grateful for today." "You must be tired, aren't you?" "No, I enjoyed the food and had a great time," she replied. The car headlights cast a slightly sad shadow on her face. "Mandy, you are a daughter I am proud of. Thank you for growing up to be so kind. Don't be swayed by what others say, and choose your own path together with Jeff." It's possible that my mother had heard the comments made by my mother-in-law. Considering that I was about to get married, she probably pretended not to hear anything to avoid causing me any trouble. I was moved by my mother's kindness and tears welled up inside me, but I smiled to hide my concern. A few days later, we completed our marriage registration and started our new life together. My husband moved into my spacious apartment, and our new family life began. My husband, who handles physically demanding delivery work, and I prepared nutritious meals on the evenings we spent together. As our days became busier and I had to work overtime more frequently, leaving no time to prepare dinner, my husband naturally began to take on the task of cooking. He often took care of house cleaning and laundry before I got home. We had not set specific roles, so things just progressed in this way. I felt a deep sense of happiness with how things were going. I never imagined Jeff would support our home so much. I'm truly grateful. With this, we'll be fine even if we have kids. When I mentioned this, my husband laughed and responded, "When you get into it, it's surprisingly fun. Maybe it's about time I start learning about child rearing too." His reliable attitude gave me a sense of security. I felt this was the life we were building together, remembering my father-in-law's words. On weekends, my husband often went to his parents' home for meals because it makes my mother happy, and he would ask me to arrange the ingredients. These included luxury items like high-grade beef and lobster from a popular shop. Visiting my husband's family was somewhat stressful for me, mostly because of my mother-in-law's complaints. She often complained about our daily lives. "Is it true that Jeff is handling the cooking? Didn't you learn respect for your husband from your mother? Jeff does the laundry too? Even underwear? Don't you know any common sense because you were raised by a single parent? Do you need that much money?" She would say harshly. However, every time, my father-in-law stood up for me. "Wait a minute. That's not the right way to say things. You might not understand because you haven't worked, but working is stressful and requires a lot of mental energy. Especially in the IT industry, where there's always a demand for new technologies and products. Mandy is working hard. Thanks to her, we get to eat delicious meat, right? It wouldn't work so well with just Jeff, haha. This always lightened the mood. When I got home, my heart would be at ease. But that day was unexpected. As I was preparing to go to work as usual, we received the sudden news of my father-in-law's passing. Upon hearing the news, my husband went pale and was at a loss for words. I couldn't accept the reality immediately, and my mind went blank. It pained me that I couldn't repay my father-in-law's kindness before he passed away so suddenly. Thinking that I wouldn't see his smile anymore, tears involuntarily started to flow. After the funeral, concerned about my mother-in-law living alone, my husband began visiting his family home more frequently than before. I also accompanied him at times, but the frequent criticisms that you lack discernment because you were raised by a single parent and you can't even do this simple thing because you were raised by a single parent gradually made it harder for me to visit. On the other hand, my husband started going directly from work to his parents' house more often, and he began not coming home at night. On the rare occasions he did come home, I hadn't prepared a meal because there was no prior notice. Perhaps influenced by his mother's words, I began to receive unfair criticism like, "You don't even have a meal ready when I come home." Is this because you were raised by a single parent? I finally understand what Mom meant. Eventually, my husband hardly ever came home. The drive between his workplace and his parents' home is about 2 hours. While I understand his concern for his mother, the long hours of driving after work and early morning commutes made me worry about his health. Before I knew it, I hadn't seen my husband in a month. Then one day, when I returned home after a long time, I received a call from my husband. "Mandy, how are you?" "I'm fine." "Rather, Jeff, aren't you the one who's tired?" His voice was as lively as ever, despite not having heard it in a long time. To be honest, I'm tired of the recent lifestyle. "Do you have any plans this Saturday?" "Saturday?" "No, I don't have anything planned." Suddenly, I optimistically thought about going somewhere since it had been a while. "I have left the management of Mom's luggage to you. Mom feels lonely living alone, and my commute is tough. I thought about a solution, and I think the best option is to have Mom move over. So I've decided for us to live with Mom. The luggage will arrive on Saturday, so please take care of it." He didn't consult with me about this at all. I haven't heard anything about this. It's troubling to have this living arrangement sprung on me like this. The spare room is practically a storeroom now. What do you plan to do about it? Today is Tuesday, and I don't have any days off until Saturday, so there's no time to clean the room. As I objected, he said, "Don't worry, it's fine even in that state. That's why I'm asking. Mom will head your way on Sunday. I'm really counting on you." Jeff's "it's okay" often isn't reliable. Does he even remember when we introduced ourselves for marriage? "Mom will be tired from the move, so I need you to help with organizing the luggage. I have a training and a business trip this Friday, and I plan to do some sightseeing with colleagues. I won't be back until next Monday, so I can't return home in the meantime. Please handle it." Leaving all the care of his mother to me while he goes sightseeing. I felt my feelings for him cooling down. If my husband can make decisions about living together on his own, I also have the right to make my own decisions. Are you serious? Despite my question, he hung up the call. Then, on the day the mother-in-law's luggage was to arrive, the doorbell rang and the delivery man asked, "Is this the right place for the luggage delivery? How much is there?" As the delivery man checked the manifest, he answered, "It seems to be a variety of sizes, but there are a total of 100 items." 100 items. That seems a bit much, but whatever. It's fine. Just leave it anywhere. I had 2 delivery workers handle the 100 boxes, and then I left the apartment. While I was out walking, I received a call from my husband. "Mandy, has Mom's luggage arrived?" "Yes, there are 100 pieces. They're already in the room." The situation was extremely frustrating. It's always about his mother. He's a true mommy's boy. 100 pieces? That's too much luggage. Please handle the unpacking. Make sure everything is relaxing for when Mom arrives. Why should I have to do it? Actually, Jeff, I've moved out. What? It seemed he didn't understand. So, I can't do the unpacking. What? What about Mom? An elderly person can't unpack alone. Is that kind of selfishness allowed just because you were raised by a single parent? There it was again, the single parent comment. I couldn't stand his condescending attitude. Jeff, you were the one who unilaterally decided about your mom moving. That's why I moved on my own too. I no longer wanted to be with this family. Also, about your mom's luggage, I don't think it needs to be unpacked. What do you mean? There was panic in his voice. I've terminated the apartment lease at the end of this month, so moving is inevitable. Can your salary even cover the rent? Let's calm down and talk. What exactly is going on? My actions after making the decision were surprisingly quick. I ended the call with my husband on Tuesday, immediately called my mother to explain the situation, and the next day, I contacted several moving companies online for quotes and took short-term leave from work. The company with the best terms responded quickly, provided the necessary boxes, and I signed up for their service right away. The moving day was set for the following Thursday afternoon during the off-season. I started packing immediately, discarding unnecessary items from the room I had lived in for years. I packed all night and, after a short rest, resumed work at dawn. I managed to finish everything by the morning of the moving day. The rest of the work was left to the movers. The next day, I contacted the real estate office to complete the apartment vacating process. When I explained these past few days' actions to my husband, he was so shocked that he couldn't say anything. I seized the opportunity to continue speaking. Actually, I'm on my way back to my parents' house. The only things left in the apartment are your personal belongings you brought at the time of our marriage and the 100 boxes. The newly arrived boxes haven't even been opened yet. So they can be returned as they are. I can no longer tolerate your excessive dependency on your mother. If you think a woman raised by a single parent is unsuitable as a wife, let's divorce as you wish. Please contact me through a lawyer for future matters. I'm about to board the train. So goodbye. My husband was shouting something on the other end of the phone, but I didn't care and ended the call. When I safely arrived at my parents' house, my mother welcomed me warmly. The next day, while enjoying a late breakfast with my mother, the doorbell rang. With a sense of dread, I answered it, and my husband pleaded, "Mandy, it was us who were wrong. Please hear us out." My husband continued knocking on the door forcefully. Not wanting to cause a disturbance in the neighborhood, I reluctantly opened the door, and there stood my husband and mother-in-law, who immediately began to apologize profusely. "Mandy, we apologize for our actions. We didn't intend to make you suggest divorce. We humbly ask you to please reconsider." Both my husband and mother-in-law apologized as sincerely as they could. "Mandy, If you leave, it's the end for us. Please reconsider." Even with their pleas, I looked down on them coldly and declared, "It's too late. No matter how much you apologize, the hurt I felt won't heal. I've suffered from being labeled as someone raised by a single parent. You're just worried about losing my income because your own is too low, aren't you? I want nothing more to do with you two. Now, leave." They were frozen by my resolute words. "If you continue to stay here, I'll have to call the police." They left in haste, fearing the police. Our divorce was finalized swiftly after that. According to my lawyer, my ex-husband made an inadvertent slip of the tongue during a training session at work, which caused a significant rift with his supervisor and ultimately led to his job loss. His continued inappropriate comments about his boss's family background directly caused his dismissal. He was very reluctant about the divorce while unemployed, but when I hinted at paying compensation, he grudgingly agreed. Meanwhile, my former mother-in-law is determined to find a proper family girl for her son, despite him being unemployed and desiring to live with his mother. Realistically, few women find an unemployed man living with his mother appealing. Currently, they live near my former in-law's house, and the story of our divorce has spread in the neighborhood, causing them to lead a low-profile life due to the shame. During this time, I've been living with my mother, focusing on my work. The incident caused a lot of worry for her, so I intend to support her fully from now on. Another very important person to me is my late father-in-law. On the anniversary of his death, I visit his grave with coffee, his favorite drink during his lifetime. The grave is always unkempt, clearly neglected by my ex-husband and his family. They probably can't manage even that due to their hectic lives. In such circumstances, I carefully clean the grave, offer the coffee, and pray quietly.